Welcome back to the Science of Ageless Living. I'm your host, Dr. Ethan Hausman Marquise. Today, I want to invite you inside the Catalyst Clinic, not the polished online version, but the real everyday space where transformation actually happens. Every week, patients sit across from me and I hear variations of the same refrain. I've seen everyone. My labs are normal, but I feel anything but normal. Or sometimes, it's just aging. What did I expect? Behind those words is something deeper. I don't feel heard. I don't want this to be my life. And that right there is where the real work begins. You see, medicine at its best is not about brushing off someone's experience just because their results don't fit the textbook. It's about listening, asking better questions, and using every tool at our disposal to connect the dots between symptoms, biology, and what's actually possible for health and quality of life as we age. This episode is about what happens after you finally admit you want more. It's about real science, rigorous, not just wishful thinking, and the concrete changes that become possible when you combine cutting-edge precision diagnostics, innovative peptide therapy, and systems-level medicine. We're going beyond quick fixes or resignation. We're talking about restoring energy, sharper thinking, and renewed purpose, all rooted in evidence and collaboration. So step past the waiting room and let's explore together what's truly possible for you. When you're seen, your story matters, and science is on your side. Before we dive into the case studies, I want to take a moment to explain what truly sets the Catalyst Clinic apart. People often assume that a longevity clinic is simply about peptides, supplements, or biohacking gadgets, but that couldn't be further from how we operate. When a patient walks through our doors, we don't start with the question, "What's your diagnosis?" We start with a very different one. What's your story? Because your physiology doesn't exist in a vacuum. It reflects your experiences, your environment, your stress load, your sleep, your nutrition, your genetics, everything that makes you uniquely you. That's why our first step is always deep diagnostics. And when I say deep, I mean deep. Inflammation markers, metabolic efficiency, hormonal rhythms, mitochondrial output, nutrient status, microbiome balance, even the genomics that shape how your body responds to interventions. All of that data is then fed into our AURian AI engine, our adaptive AI system built specifically for precision longevity medicine. AURian doesn't replace clinical judgment, it enhances it. It picks up subtle physiological links that even the most experienced clinician could overlook. It helps us build protocols that are not only effective, but elegant interventions that respect the interconnectedness of the entire system. Every treatment plan we create is personalized down to the molecule. Nothing is off the shelf. Everything is reversible, incremental, and continuously monitored. We track your progress through lab work, symptom logging, wearable data, and real-time feedback loops. If something shifts in your biology, your plan shifts with it. And something I take very seriously, safety is not an afterthought. It's engineered into every step of your protocol. We operate with clinical rigor, ethical clarity, and transparent communication. There are no miracle cures here, no shortcuts, no promises of overnight transformation. What we offer instead is honesty, precision, and a roadmap built on evidence, not hype. We're here to guide you, to educate you, and to empower you with the tools to understand your own physiology. Because longevity isn't about chasing immortality. It's about optimizing the years you already have with intelligence, with accountability, and with a deep respect for the biology that makes you human. Now, with that foundation in place, let's look at what this approach actually produces in the real world. Let's begin with a case that so many people can relate to, our recreational athletes. The runners, the cyclists, the weekend warriors, the people who don't need a podium or a medal, they just need their body to cooperate so they can keep doing what they love. This particular patient came to us exhausted, frustrated, and honestly defeated. He'd been living with chronic tendon pain for years, the kind of pain that whispers at first, then nags, then eventually decides it's going to write the rules of your life for you. He'd tried everything, endless physiotherapy, anti-inflammatory medications that offered temporary relief, but ultimately did more harm than good. even corticosteroid injections, which as we know can weaken tissue over time and create the illusion of improvement while the underlying structure continues to break down. What he wanted was simple, his body back. So we did what we always do at the Catalyst Clinic. We stepped back and looked at the entire system, because tendon pain is never just tendon pain. It's a signal, a story, a reflection of what's happening in the wider physiology. Our diagnostics revealed something important. The tissue was degenerated, yes, but it was repairable. He had poor microcirculation, low-grade chronic inflammation, and what we see all too often, mitochondrial exhaustion, meaning the cells simply didn't have the energy to repair the damaged collagen matrix. In traditional models, that's where the story ends. In longevity medicine, that's where the story begins. We built a regenerative stack targeted at restoring the environment of healing. First, BPC 157 and TB 500, two peptides that work synergistically to enhance angiogenesis, reduce inflammation, and accelerate soft tissue repair. These aren't magic. They don't override biology. They support it. Next, NAD+, because you cannot regenerate tissue if your mitochondria are underperforming. We needed to boost his cellular energy production so that the repair processes had the fuel to run properly. We added red light therapy for mitochondrial activation and microcirculatory improvement, a powerful combination that helps oxygen and nutrients actually reach the injured area. Then we structured a progressive loading program, intelligent, precise, and monitored weekly. Tendons don't heal through rest. They heal through calibrated stress. Finally, we rebuilt his nutrition into an anti-inflammatory framework, omega-3s, polyphenols, high-quality protein, and consistent micronutrient support. Because no protocol can outpace a diet that's inflaming you every day. Now the timeline. By week 2, something subtle but meaningful happened. The pain dialed down, not gone, just quieter. By week 3, he had a milestone he hadn't experienced in years, a pain-free training session. By week 6, we had both restored mobility and ultrasound evidence showing the tissue had visibly remodeled, new collagen formation, reduced swelling, increased vascularity. He wasn't just feeling better. He was structurally better. And the most important lesson from this, the body is not broken. It's responding to its environment. When you provide the right conditions, circulation, energy, and intelligent loading, the body remembers exactly how to heal. It doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete or someone who just wants to run with your kids again. Regeneration is not a miracle. It's a process, a science. And when guided correctly, it's remarkably predictable. This case wasn't about peptides alone. It wasn't about light therapy alone. It wasn't about exercise alone. It was about orchestrating all of it. Biology, movement, energy, and aligning the system so the body could do what it was designed to do, repair. This is the power of precision longevity medicine. This is what happens when healing becomes intentional, structured, and supported instead of suppressed or ignored. Our next case is one that I think will resonate with so many people, especially those who've been told again and again that everything looks normal, even as their life quietly falls apart. She was in her late 20s, a driven professional, someone who'd always handled a heavy workload, long hours, and high expectations. Then came a series of infections, a wave of life stress, and suddenly her physiology simply collapsed. From the outside, she looked fine, polished, high-functioning, the kind of person colleagues assume is just a bit tired, but inside, she was barely holding on. She could make it through a morning, sometimes a few hours, but anything beyond that, going out with friends, running errands, even a full workday, felt impossible. And she couldn't explain it because she didn't feel sick. She felt empty, like the power cable to her biology had been unplugged. When she arrived at the Catalyst Clinic, she didn't want pep talks or motivation. She wanted clarity, a reason her body no longer worked. And the labs told a very different story than her appearance suggested. She had low NAD+, meaning her cellular energy factories were running at a deficit. She had high systemic inflammation, the kind that slowly erodes resilience. Her mitochondrial markers were suppressed. Her gut integrity was compromised, and her circadian rhythm was completely dysregulated. No stable timing cues, no predictable energy cycles. What she was experiencing wasn't fatigue, it wasn't burnout, it was a cellular system failure. And that reframe changed everything, because once you stop treating fatigue as a character flaw and start treating it as a biochemical collapse, the path forward becomes much clearer. We built her protocol step by step. First, NAD plus microdosing, not the big spikes that overwhelm people, but gentle daily support that slowly restores the cell's ability to create ATP, like turning the lights back on in a dim room. Next, mitochondrial peptides, MOTSC and SS31, two molecules that support mitochondrial resilience, reduce oxidative stress, and improve energy output at the cellular level. These were foundational in lifting her baseline from barely functioning to stable. We addressed the gut because you cannot rebuild energy in a system that's inflamed from the inside out. We used KPV, one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory peptides, for gut restoration and paired it with zinc carnosine to strengthen mucosal integrity and reduce inflammatory signaling. Then we rebuilt her rhythm, circadian resets, morning light exposure, consistent wake times, controlled evening environments. Because when your body loses track of the time, it also loses track of how to generate energy. Layered into that were subtle thyroid and adrenal calibrations, tiny nudges rather than aggressive interventions, just enough to bring her endocrine system into alignment with the new mitochondrial support. And finally, we train the nervous system, not with complexity, but with consistency, vagal retraining, breath work, and slow, structured downregulation. The body cannot heal in fight or flight. It heals in safety. The timeline was remarkable, but not surprising. After 4 weeks, she got through a full day without crashing, a milestone she once thought impossible. By 8 weeks, she could go out again, dinners, social events, short outings without fear of collapse. At 12 weeks, her inflammation had dropped dramatically, her sleep normalized, and her energy began to feel, her words, like a real person again. And I want to highlight something critical. Her recovery had nothing to do with willpower, nothing to do with trying harder, and everything to do with restoring the basic energy generating machinery of her cells. Fatigue is not a moral failure. It is not laziness. It is cellular energy collapse. When you address it with precision, with NAD plus support, mitochondrial peptides, gut repair, circadian alignment, and nervous system recalibration, you see recoveries that feel dramatic, but are, in truth, simply biology returning to what it was designed to do. This is why we approach fatigue the way we do. Because when you treat energy as a physiological problem, not a psychological one, you give people their lives back. Our final case today brings us into the world of aesthetics, but not the superficial kind most people imagine. At the Catalyst Clinic, aesthetics is simply physiology in a different language. Hair, skin, collagen, texture. They are biomarkers. They tell you what's happening beneath the surface. She was 38, vibrant, successful, and starting to notice the early signs of change. Hair thinning at the crown, a weakening hairline, and skin that suddenly felt less resilient. Not age, just tired. And like so many people, she assumed this was normal. Genetics, stress, age. I hear that all the time. It's just how it is. But nothing in biology just happens. Her assessment told a much deeper story. She had scalp inflammation, something most people overlook, but which silently destroys follicles long before visible hair loss. She had nutrient deficiencies, especially the micronutrients required for keratin synthesis and follicular energy. She had oxidative stress, overwhelming the cells responsible for growth and repair. And importantly, poor collagen turnover reflected in both her skin texture and her slower hair cycling. This wasn't a cosmetic issue. It was a biological systems issue. So we built her plan from the inside out, because true aesthetic medicine isn't about covering problems. It's about correcting the physiology that creates them. We started with GHKQ, one of the most elegant peptides in regenerative medicine. She used it topically and via microinjections into the scalp. GHKQ promotes angiogenesis, reduces inflammation, and accelerates collagen remodeling. It doesn't force growth. It restores the environment where growth can occur naturally. To calm the inflammation driving much of her hair loss, we introduced KPV, a powerful anti-inflammatory peptide that works systemically and locally to reduce immune overactivity and protect delicate follicles. Then we layered in microneedling, safely, precisely, and on a structured cadence. It stimulates collagen, increases blood flow, and improves absorption of the peptides we were applying. On top of that, we incorporated exosome therapy. Exosomes are like high-information messengers, tiny packages of regenerative signals that promote cellular repair and enhance follicular strength. They're not fillers. They're not drugs. They're biological communication amplified. But we didn't stop there. External interventions are only half the story. Hair and skin require raw materials, so we added amino acid support, the essential building blocks for keratin, collagen, and connective tissue. Without amino acids, no amount of topical therapy will create new hair shafts. And then came what most people underestimate, sleep optimization and anti-inflammatory nutrition coaching. Because if your cortisol is unstable and your diet is driving inflammatory pathways, the scalp becomes a hostile environment. Follicles shrink, turnover slows, collagen weakens. She embraced the full program: topical, internal, nutritional, behavioral. Not perfectly, but consistently. The timeline reflects what happens when you treat aesthetics as biology. By the first month, she noticed less hair in the shower, less shedding throughout the day. By month 2, the thinning at the crown stabilized and early density improvements began. Around month 3, new growth appeared at the hairline. Those delicate, tiny, hopeful strands that mark true reversal, not just camouflage. And her skin, it became smoother, firmer, more luminous, not because of injections or superficial fixes, but because collagen turnover had improved systemically. What I want people to understand is this: aesthetics is not vanity. It is physiology. Hair and skin reflect inflammation, nutrition, stress, mitochondrial output, collagen dynamics, and hormone balance. When you treat them as isolated cosmetic issues, you get temporary results. But when you treat them as part of a biological system, the results become deeper, more durable, and far more natural. This case wasn't about a single peptide or a trendy treatment. It was about harmony: GHKQ externally, KPV internally, microneedling and exosomes for regeneration, amino acids for structure, nutrition and sleep for support. When these elements work together, the body responds beautifully, and that's the power of precision aesthetics: root, cause, whole, system, biologically aligned. Let's move to our final case, one that captures something I'm seeing more and more: the collapse of cognitive resilience in people who, on paper, seem to be functioning at a high level. He was a high-performing professional, sharp, driven, the kind of person whose career had always matched his mental horsepower. And then, almost overnight, things began to slip. Not dramatically at first, just small lapses, moments of fog, a sense that thoughts were taking longer to assemble. Then came the burnout, the irritability, the fractured sleep. And the more he pushed, the worse it became. This is the part that frustrates so many high performers. You can feel your mind not working the way it once did, but the outside world still expects the same output. And you can't explain what's happening because it doesn't look like illness. It looks like you're just stressed. But what he experienced wasn't stress. It was neurochemical depletion. His biomarkers told a very clear story. He had low dopamine, which explained the difficulties with motivation, focus, and executive function. He had suppressed BDNF, meaning his brain's ability to create and strengthen neural pathways was compromised. He had mitochondrial stress, neurons struggling to generate enough energy for high-level cognitive work. And perhaps most telling of all, he had a chronic cortisol spike, the kind that quietly chips away at memory, mood, and mental clarity. This wasn't about discipline. It wasn't about mindset. It was physiology, and physiology can be rebuilt. We started with two of my favorite neuropeptides for cognitive repair, Cmax and Celonc. Cmax to support BDNF, neuroplasticity, and high-level focus. Celonc to stabilize GABA pathways, reduce overwhelm, and create a calmer cognitive baseline. Together, they don't stimulate. They smooth, allowing the mind to operate with clarity rather than force. Then we added NAD+, because you cannot repair neurons if their mitochondria are exhausted. NAD+ supports neuronal resilience, energy production, and long-term cognitive health. For someone operating at his level, this was foundational, but molecules alone don't restore a mind. We rebuilt his behaviors just as intentionally. We corrected his sleep architecture, anchoring predictable rhythms instead of the adrenaline-driven cycle he'd been living in. We structured light exposure, especially morning light, to regulate dopamine pathways and cortisol timing. We added micronootropics, each one individually tailored to his biomarkers. Small, precise boosts rather than the overstimulating stacks people often misuse. And then came the interventions high performers rarely give themselves. Movement snacks throughout the day to improve oxygenation and increase BDNF naturally. Pleasure not tied to productivity. Actual enjoyment, not achievement. And strategic downtime intentionally placed to let the nervous system reset rather than accumulate tension. We weren't chasing performance. We were rebuilding the infrastructure that makes performance possible. The timeline unfolded exactly as we expected. By 3 weeks, his focus sharpened. Not the forced kind, but the natural clarity he remembered from years prior. By 6 weeks, the fog lifted. Tasks that once felt effortful became fluid again. By 8 weeks, something far more important happened. His performance became sustainable. He had boundaries, energy, and cognitive endurance, not the high output, high crash cycle he'd lived in before, but a steady, strong, re-energized baseline. And this is the part I want everyone listening to understand. Cognition is not fixed. It's not a static trait or a personality type. It is a reflection of neurochemistry, mitochondrial capacity, stress signaling, sleep timing, movement, pleasure, and environment. When you address these pillars with precision, when you match peptides to biomarkers, routines to biology, and lifestyle to neuroplasticity, that you don't just sharpen the mind, you rebuild it. And when you do that well, performance stops being a fight and becomes a natural expression of a brain that's finally supported. So, what do all these cases have in common? 3 very different people, 3 different challenges: injury, fatigue, aesthetics, cognition, and yet they all reveal the same deeper truth. Healing follows principles, not guesses. At the Catalyst Clinic, we call this the Catalyst Method, and it rests on 3 pillars. First, identify. We don't assume. We measure. We use biomarker-rich diagnostics, advanced panels, wearable data, and our Orion AI engine to uncover the true root causes. Not the symptoms, not the surface level story, but the actual physiological drivers. Inflammation patterns, mitochondrial output, neurotransmitter profiles, gut integrity, circadian timing. Every system informs the next. Second, repair. Once we know what's broken, we stabilize the foundation. That means precision peptides, targeted nutrition, restoring sleep architecture, rehabilitating the gut, regulating the stress axis, and giving the body the raw materials it needs to heal. Not overload, not overwhelm, just the right interventions in the right order for the right physiology. Third, optimize. This is where longevity, performance, and resilience are built. We individualize every protocol, incremental, reversible, monitored, and collaborative. As the body improves, interventions evolve. As biomarkers shift, plans adapt. Optimization isn't more, it's better, refinement, balance, and clarity. And the most important part, healing isn't linear. It bends, it plateaus, it accelerates. But what shapes the journey every time is teamwork, empathy, communication, and a shared commitment to doing this the right way. Because when clinician, patient, and data work together, the body doesn't just recover, it transforms. As we look ahead, it's impossible to ignore that medicine is shifting rapidly, profoundly, and in ways that will redefine how we think about aging, health, and the human lifespan. We're entering a new era, one where the old model of wait until something breaks and then try to fix it no longer serves us, and honestly, it never did. The future of ageless medicine is not reactive. It's anticipatory, preventive, and deeply personalized. We're seeing breakthroughs everywhere. Next-generation peptides that target mitochondrial networks, tissue regeneration, neuroplasticity, and immune recalibration. Senolytics designed to clear out dysfunctional, inflammatory cells, essentially removing biological debris that accelerates aging. Exosome therapies capable of enhancing cellular communication and repair in ways we could only imagine a decade ago. And then there's epigenetics, the ability to influence how our genes express themselves, not changing the genetic code, but changing the biological conversation around it. Layer on top of that the rise of AI-driven predictive longevity. Tools like our own AURian system that analyze thousands of data points to anticipate dysfunction before symptoms ever appear. Systems that help us read patterns invisible to the human eye, allowing us to intervene early, gently, and intelligently. But here's the thing. Technology alone isn't the revolution. Anyone can list peptides, or run fancy labs, or talk about AI. The real revolution is integration, bringing evidence-based tools together in a way that is ethical, transparent, and always centered around the patient as a whole person, not a collection of biomarkers. At the Catalyst Clinic, that's our North Star. We adopt what's proven, we monitor what's promising, and we avoid anything that compromises safety, autonomy, or realism. It's easy to sell miracles. It's much harder and much more meaningful to build sustainable, personalized pathways that honor both physiology and humanity. And this is where ageless medicine is truly heading. Care that predicts instead of reacts. Care that treats the root cause, not the symptom. Care that evolves with you, guided by data, refined by experience, and shaped by collaboration. We are moving into a world where we don't just extend lifespan. We extend health span the vibrant, high-functioning years, and with the right tools, the right science, and the right ethical framework, that future isn't distant. It's unfolding right now. Thank you for joining me inside the Catalyst Clinic today. If you recognize pieces of yourself in any of these stories, I want you to remember this. Your biology is adaptable. It's responsive. And with the right science, the right structure, and care that truly honors your complexity, real transformation is absolutely possible. If this episode brought you clarity or hope, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need it. For clinical updates, research insights, and behind-the-scenes work from our team, visit thecatalystclinic.com and follow The Catalyst Clinic on Instagram. I'm Dr. Ethan Hausman Markey, and this is the Science of Ageless Living. Our mission is simple: to live younger for longer.